The following presentation is made possible by a grant from the insurance firm of Lester Smart, Fairman, Tremmel, and Arndt, 210 9th Street South, and by the Southwood County Historical Corporation, 543rd Street South, Wisconsin Rapids, Wisconsin.
Gross here. Welcome once again to another history adventure with Phil Brown, our trusty narrator, and myself, as we delve into pictures and places that have so strongly influenced our past.
That's right, Paul. And as you may recall in our last video together, we promised to make this one a sort of time capsule addressed to the people of 2060 and beyond.
Well, Phil, that's just what we're going to do. But we also have to make it just as enjoyable for those folks who are viewing it today.
Sounds like a tall order, Paul, but I'm sure we can pull it off. So let's get started. In our immediate past, we have elected our first black president. Not long ago, that would have been unthinkable. Running against Barack Obama was a Republican senator from Arizona, John McCain. McCain surprised everyone when he announced that his running mate would be Sarah Palin, governor of Alaska. Palin was a feisty campaigner, and the media loved to take potshots at her every move, even after the campaign had ended. At times, the race was close, and almost every household displayed their preference. It seemed like the campaign would never end. Finally, on November 4th, 2008, we had made our choice. The voter turnout was heavy, and at last we could put the constant media coverage behind us. When it was all over, our new president would be Barack Obama.
So much for politics.
One of the things we 2010 folks wonder about is if we'll ever have high-speed trains like they have in Europe and the Orient.
Well, as it is now, our airports get more crowded every year, and flight delays are endless.
Right, Paul. And remember back in the 1930s and 40s, we had really good rail service. It was a time when people got all dressed up to board the local dependable Hiawatha passenger train and ended up in Chicago, Milwaukee, or Minneapolis in just a few hours. High-speed rail gets talked about, and it seems like a move in that direction is about to get started.
Only time will tell, and you folks of 2060 will know the answer. I hope we haven't let you down. Phil, I'd like to take just a moment to comment about a landmark in the Ginger Park area. On the north side of the park is one of the oldest buildings in the area, the former Christian Science Church building. About 6 months ago, it was sold to a private developer. I understand he plans to restore the building pretty much as it was. This picture was taken over 100 years ago, when it was the original location of the First Congregational Church. At the time, the building had a tall steeple, as shown here. What will it look like 50 years from now? Only time will tell.
There's another well-preserved landmark that's worth mentioning, and I'm sure it will be around 50 years from now. Here it is at the corner of East Grand Avenue and Lincoln Street. This sidewalk clock is almost 100 years old, and older folks still refer to it as the bank clock. You see, the First National Bank building on West Grand Avenue was dedicated in 1921. A year or two after the dedication, the sidewalk clock was installed. For many years, it was located on Grand Avenue and was also visible in both directions of 3rd Avenue. With the advent of large semi-trucks, the clock was subject to damage and was moved to a safer location on 3rd Avenue. A number of years later, in 2001 to be exact, the clock malfunctioned and parts for the clock control system were no longer available. The clock was then donated to the Southwood County Historical Museum. Enter Paul Gross, our local jeweler.
The clock control system used a fine Telechron motor, one of the best. But with the advent of quartz movements, Telechron had gone out of business. However, I had a few new clock motors of a different make, so I set to work adapting the clock to one of these motors. The clock had a small disc with a pin that revolved once each minute and tripped a mercury switch which triggered the hands. Trouble was, there was no way that I could adapt the disc to the clock motors I had. Then I noticed that the disc was the same size as a penny. So I went to work on my metal lathe and made a hub and pin for a penny. As long as I was doing it, I made 4 of them, one for each of my motors. This is how it functions. There's the penny, and for you people of 2060, fear not, I stored the other 3 spare motors ready to go inside of the control cabinet, which is located inside of the building. This control unit sends a 12-volt DC signal to the clock once each minute to advance the hands.
Moving the clock posed somewhat of a challenge until it was discovered that a large threaded screw eye was stored in the base of the clock. It simply screwed into the top and the clock was lifted straight up for its trip to the new location at Lincoln and East Grand. Those folks of old thought of everything, and let it be known that that screw eye is still stored in the base, if the clock ever has to be moved again.
Well, Phil, if that clock gets moved again, I doubt that we'll be around to see it.
Getting on to other matters, the year 2009 marked a very serious decline in the national economy. As a result, the nation's jobless rate was the highest since the Great Depression of 1929. Consumer spending dropped dramatically and was especially tough on the auto industry. Locally, several dealers closed their doors. Mark Motors on Highway 54, a Chrysler, Dodge, and Suzuki dealer, was a case in point. A few days before the closing, Paul and I went out to look things over and check out the remaining inventory. This is some of what Chrysler had to offer in their 2009.
You know, Phil, this is quite dramatic when you consider that locally we have always had a Chrysler and Dodge dealership in Wisconsin Rapids, even through the 1929 Depression era. Of course, in those days, there was no foreign competition.
Meanwhile, the big three automakers were sizing down. General Motors announced that it would discontinue its Pontiac and Saturn lines. Over here at Neville Buick Pontiac, we dropped in to have a look at what the 2009 models of Pontiac had to offer. There is no local Saturn dealer, by the way. A few years before, GM had dropped the Oldsmobile line, which had failed to turn a profit. Now it was the proud Pontiac and the Saturn that would go. While Chrysler and GM filed for bankruptcy protection, Ford was the lone survivor. Ford was ready with several smart-looking, well-built, fuel-efficient models. The Ford Fusion and the Ford Focus, cars that would give the imports strong competition. Then came a shot in the arm for the car dealers. The government announced a program called Cash for Clunkers. The idea was if you were driving an older gas-guzzling car, you could trade it in for a more efficient vehicle after making your deal. Uncle Sam would kick in an additional up to $4,500 to get that clunker off the road. The dealer, in turn, had to guarantee to junk the clunker. This is how the program was promoted at the local Ford agency. A clunker in the dumpster.
So Phil, while all of these cars are quite familiar to our 2010 folks, 50 years from now, they'll be shiny antiques.
That's right, Paul. So let's turn the tables a little and show those 2060 folks some of the automotive antiques we currently admire.
Well, Phil, I can't think of a better place to do that than to drop in on the annual Vintage Car Show over at Iola, Wisconsin.
Let's go for it. It happens every year in mid-July, this 2009 exhibit being the 39th time for the event. Hundreds of beautifully restored cars with owners anxious to show off these treasures draw crowds from all over America. The 4-day event features every make and model you could imagine. Cars like this beautifully restored Packard from the 1920s. Packard was once the choice of presidents like Franklin Roosevelt as they rolled down Washington's Pennsylvania Avenue in shiny 4-door convertibles. This distinctive hood ornament was standard on Packards for many years. And here's a later 4-door convertible model that was a millionaire's favorite. After World War II, Packard quality seemed to fall behind as Cadillac took over, and although it was a beautiful car, this was one of the last models Packard had to offer before ending production about 1955. Here, a 1917 Locomobile is proudly parked next to a ruby red Cadillac convertible from the late 1920s. This 1917 Kissel car was built right here in Wisconsin. The Kissel was considered a fine automobile, but hard times eventually put the company out of business. And here we have a legendary Cord. The sporty model was built in the 1930s, could boast of concealed headlights in the fenders that opened at night with the turn of a small crank on the dash. Like so many other automakers, Cord was a victim of the Great Depression. International is known for building great trucks, but in 1908 they also built cars. This one was known as the International Auto Buggy. Electric cars were also making a stand in the 20s. Here's proof in this 1929 Detroit Electric. Its nearest competitor was the Baker Electric. These cars were extremely quiet, making them somewhat of a hazard for inattentive pedestrians.
Phil, I can guarantee you one thing. In 2060, folks will still be talking and admiring the Tucker automobile. This beautiful car was Preston Tucker's dream. From its central Cyclops headlight to its air-cooled rear-engine power plant. a car that was well ahead of its time. But its failure was brought on by a series of issues too involved to relate in this short presentation. Of the original 51 Tuckers built, they tell us that 47 are left, and most recently, one was sold at auction for $470,000.
Right here in central Wisconsin, we also had an occasional show of cars, mostly local owner-restored vehicles, usually survivors from the 1940 and 50s era.
We might mention right here and now, as we speak, a gallon of regular gas costs about $2.60 a gallon. And at that price, new car buyers are very conscious of fuel efficiency.
That's right. Gone are the days when gas was cheap, as in this advertisement of 5 gallons for 97 cents. It was September of 1941 when this ad appeared in our local newspaper. Lyle Gross was celebrating the grand opening of this new Standard Oil gas station at the busy corner of 8th and Baker Streets. A busy corner indeed. At the time, it was the route of Highway 54. And how about that complete deluxe lube job for just $1? So much for cars. Perhaps you're not aware of it, but right here in Wisconsin Rapids, we have the last of a dying breed, a standalone liquor store. At one time, we had 6 or 7 of these liquor establishments in Wisconsin Rapids. Now, only one survives. In fact, you won't even find one in Marshfield, Stevens Point, or Wausau. That's what makes Kelly's Liquor Store on 8th Street so unusual.
Let's drop into Kelly's and see how this unique business continues to operate while others have closed their doors.
Well, hi Dan.
Hi Phil.
How are you today?
Oh, pretty good.
Oh, good to see you. We're at Kelly's Liquor Store on 8th Street here in Wisconsin Rapids, and it is Friday, August 14th, 2009, and we're here to talk about the liquor store business. Dan, thank you for joining us today. How long has Kelly's Liquor Store been in business here in Wisconsin Rapids?
Next year will be 50 years.
50 years.
Yep.
Has this always been your only location?
Oh no, my father started in 1960 on Baker Street, where Baker Street Grill is right now, and then we were there for 5 years, and then from there we went to the corner of 8th and Grand, where there was a gas station right on the corner, but we were the second building in. It was an old McCain grocery store building, and so then we were there for 5 years, and then they were going to tear the building down to widen the intersection of 8th and Grand, and that's when we moved out here in 1970 then.
Right.
What's your address here on 8th Street, Dan?
2131 8th Street South.
2131 8th Street South.
Years there.
Now, there used to be a lot of liquor stores in Wisconsin Rapids.
Oh yeah.
And you're the last standalone liquor store in town in Wisconsin Rapids. But can you remember some of the other liquor stores?
Oh yeah. There was one where right next to where the Dairy Queen is now was Eva Hine Rapids Liquor, and then across the river there was a freestanding liquor store there. Leo Coons we had it at one time, and then a few people after that. That's where the gas station is, right past the IGA store on the other side of town.
Oh, okay.
And
competition.
Oh yeah, but the liquor stores were basically all independents like ourselves.
Yeah.
But
now,
they're all gone by the wayside.
Why did Kelly's Liquor survive all these years and the other ones have fallen by the wayside?
Well, we kind of found our niches and specialized in a lot of things like wines. We got into wines years ago. When they were just starting to become popular, and we really worked on that. So we kind of got a following there. We did some of the carried a lot of stuff that other places didn't carry. Full selection of things, and so we kind of found our niches through the years.
Yeah, I noticed there's a lot of wine. How many different bottles of wine do you offer?
Well, we've got over 1,000 different kinds from 20 different countries, and then, and we buy cases of all.
Have you seen drinking habits change from 50 years ago?
Oh yeah, they're the proofs on things have dropped a lot. It used to be whiskeys were all like 90 proof, 100 proof, 96 and stuff. Now they're all dropping down to 80, some are 70 even. White goods have become real popular, where used to be Scotch, like vodka, gin, vodka, but vodka especially is probably taken over more than anything. Rums.
50 years in the business, you've probably seen a lot of other changes in the business as well.
Oh yeah. Well, one of the big ones is years ago everything was quarts and fifths and whatnot. Well, then the government was going to go metric for the whole country with speed limits and everything. Well, they made the liquor industry change to metric, but then they never changed anything else. They decided back down, and so we're still metric on everything. That's why we go liters and whatnot. But if you give a report to the government, you have to convert it back to gallons. Typical.
Do you remember the G bottle?
Oh yeah, the beer used to come in and it was like a gallon bottle, and like Gettleman was a good one for it and stuff. And the big old joke always was, guys would get drunk, and they'd hit the other guy over the head with it and say, "Gee!" That's how they got their name, but it was really a gallon bottle. But then the liquor too. A lot of back then, every bottle had a state liquor tax stamp on it. Which
that's great. Well, we certainly appreciate your time today, Dan.
Sure.
Thank you very much. And 50 years strong next year in 2010.
Going strong.
And we wish you many, many more years of success.
Thank you.
Obviously, Kelly picked the right location for his liquor store, 8th Street being the high traffic area that it is. In fact, I've gathered a few statistics that should be of interest, especially for you folks of 2060. Have a look, Phil.
From the Riverview Expressway south to Griffith Avenue, which, by the way, according to current planning, will be Highway 54 to Port Edwards by 2060. There are over 100 business establishments along that stretch of 8th Street South. From tattoo parlors to banks, this section of 8th Street has it all. There are 7 fast food and 9 restaurants to satisfy our hunger on this portion of 8th Street. And 6 car dealers help keep the 5 gas stations pumping. 5 banks and 1 credit union keep it all happening. And in case you run out of cash, 4 payday loan offices will tide you over. If you're not one for cruising around, there are 7 shopping centers that bring it all together. If all of this gives you a headache, 4 8th Street pharmacies can make it all better. Our cars need fixing too, and 5 auto parts stores and an Ace Hardware can solve that problem. If you're crowded for space, there are 5 motels to accommodate your overnight guests. And how could you look your best if it weren't for those barber and beauty shops? And if you're losing that summer tan, there's even a tanning salon. If bowling is your thing, you'll find it on 8th Street. And there's also 2 fitness centers to keep you in shape. Aside from all that, there is the ever-present assortment of real estate and insurance agents. Taking our viewers to another subject, do you suppose that 50 years from now, they'll still have a city band with those wonderful outdoor concerts?
Well, just in case, for all of you 2060 viewers, this is what it's like as the city band plays right here at Robinson Park. Certainly a picturesque location. However, at times the music gets drowned out by the growl of a diesel locomotive and the shuffle of freight cars at the nearby railroad yards.
Understand that of late there has been talk of finding a more central, quiet location for the outdoor concerts, with possibly a no-frills classic band shell. Better exposure and access would certainly improve attendance.
Once again, only time will tell.
Now, how about our Postal Service? It's been through a lot of changes, and they tell us more are on the way.
I can remember back before the early 1940s when we still had 2 residential deliveries a day, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. Back then, and for many years, a first-class stamp was 3 cents, and postcards were a penny.
For all of you 2060 folks, our 2010 postal rate is 44 cents for first class. The once penny postcard now costs 31 cents, 28 cents for the postage, and 3 cents for the card. Yet, in spite of all that, the Postal Service is losing money.
We currently have mail delivery 6 days a week, but it sounds like it will soon drop to 5 days, eliminating Saturday deliveries entirely.
Come to think of it, Paul, we should mention that from time to time there has been talk of eliminating the penny.
That's right, Phil. In fact, they tell us it costs more to make a penny than it's worth.
A minute ago, we mentioned our newspaper, the Daily Tribune. The Wisconsin Rapids Daily Tribune has been our primary local news source for over 90 years, having evolved from its predecessors, the Daily Leader and the Grand Rapids Tribune.
The paper slimmed down from what it used to be, but that's a result of television and, of course, the internet. This is true of most newspapers. In fact, a number of large metropolitan papers have gone out of business.
Yet, in spite of a weaker following for the print media, locally a second newspaper has entered our market. On Thursday, June 4th of 2009, The Voice of Wisconsin Rapids, a weekly publication, issued its first edition. The 20-page paper was circulated free for the first 3 issues, followed by subscription and advertising support. Currently, the paper is doing well, and the publishers, Jeff and Kathy Williams, are optimistic about its future.
Well, we certainly wish them success. On another matter, each year for some time now, we've been witness to a local balloon rally.
The 3-day annual event raises about $25,000 for the Children's Miracle Network, an organization that provides assisted care for sick and injured children. Weather can sometimes be a problem for the event, but on average we've been pretty lucky. Of course, wind conditions are also a determining factor in the ability of these colorful giants to lift off. But once in the air, the free-floating balloons are truly a spectacular sight. Besides the balloons, 10 or more musical groups perform, donating their time and talent at no charge. So, with that in mind, we offer you folks of 2060 a challenge to keep this good thing going.
Phil, the movies. What about the movies?
Well, Paul, that's kind of your area of expertise.
Well, that's true. In my younger days, I was a projectionist at each of the 3 fine local theaters, the Wisconsin, the Rapids, and the Palace. In those days, every theater had 2 35mm projectors, and locally, 2 union projectionists for each booth. These 2 Simplex E7 projectors were state-of-the-art at the Wisconsin Theater. The large, peerless carbon arc lamps delivered a rich, brilliant picture out to the screen. Why 2 projectors? You see, a 2,000-foot reel of film runs just over 20 minutes. So every 20 minutes or so, the idle projector takes over. The time for the changeover is signaled to the projectionist by cue marks on the screen. 1 to start the machine, and a 2nd to switch the picture and sound. The 900-seat auditorium was frequently filled to capacity for the 7 and 9 p.m. shows. It's all different nowadays.
Paul, let's make a visit to our local Rogers Cinema and see how different it really is. This is Rogers Cinema, our one and only movie house, which was formerly the 420-seat Rapids Theater. There indeed have been a lot of changes. This cinema complex now consists of 7 theaters with a total seating capacity of 667. The film is still delivered on 2,000-foot reels, from which it is spliced together and loaded on a large revolving table. From the turntable, it feeds to a single continuous run projector, and then back to a receiving table as it plays out. The brilliant light source is a high-intensity lamp that replaces the old carbon arc system. Here, theater manager Kevin Kinnick shows us the 4,000-watt state-of-the-art light source.
Used to light the screen today, as opposed to the old carbon arc film. This is a 4,000-watt bulb right here.
What is remarkable about the system is how these modern machines are so efficient that here at Rogers Cinema, only 1 projectionist is required to operate all 7 theaters.
Yep. Are you using that?
Unlike most movie theaters, Rogers Cinema no longer has a marquee. It was on October 15th of 2009 that the marquee, which was in poor condition, was removed. It was the last movie marquee in the city, where 3 of these colorful flashing icons once welcomed us to Dreamland and the cinema experience.
So Phil, in closing, what in particular do you think we are doing locally that will be of most benefit to our ancestors, the folks of 2060?
Well, Paul, without hesitation, I must say that our beautiful Riverview Hospital complex is indeed a gift to the future. This new so-called tower section, over 2 years in construction, was dedicated on September 6th of 2009. More than 2,000 people showed up on that bright September Sunday to see for themselves this wonderful addition to the Riverview complex. Spacious rooms, maximum efficiency, privacy, and a comfortable setting are the hallmark of this modern facility. Surely the future will provide even more techniques and efficiencies to our Riverview Hospital, most of which we cannot yet imagine. But let it be known here and now that in this year of 2010, Riverview Hospital is on the leading edge and ready for whatever our medical future has to offer.
Nicely put, Phil. And with that, we come to the end of another journey back in time.
And while we didn't go too far back this time, our history well never runs dry. There's more on the way.
So, until the next time, I'm Paul Brooks.
And I'm Phil Brown. Thanks for listening.
Having seen this program, would you like to invest in your heritage? For just $15 a year, you are invited to become a member of the Southwood County Historical Corporation. Your contribution will assure continued research and preservation of our past. As a member, you will receive Artifacts, our award-winning quarterly publication. Artifacts is chock full of local history stories, memorabilia, and photos that you won't want to miss. All of this with your membership for just $15. That small check, an envelope, and a stamp is all that it takes. Why not do it today? Or better yet, stop in for a visit and discover our extensive exhibits, massive collection of what you never knew about your community, and why you'll want to be a member of our prize-winning organization.